Choice project time. I am doing Bailey Sarian style talk about a serial killer while I do my makeup. So her intro. Hi friends. I'm not gonna do the intro theme, but I'm gonna talk about Ed Gein today because he's crazy and also Bailey Sarian's like favorite. So warning before I start. He's pretty messed up. It's a little bit gross. Should be fine though. I'm not gonna go into too much detail because yucky. So Ed Gein was born as Edward Theodore Gein in La Crosse County in Wisconsin. He was born on August 27th, 1906. Some of his like how serial killers get like cool names, which is a whole different topic. He was known as the Mad Butcher, the Plainfield Butcher, and the Plainfield Ghoul throughout his, I guess, like his trial. So his like early life, you know how like serial killers always have kind of like a screwed up early life? They either like kill baby animals or like abused, that stuff. His parents weren't in a very healthy marriage. His father was an alcoholic, so his early life, as with many serial killers, was a little bit messed up. Serial killers are they're like abused or I don't know, kill baby animals or just, that sort of stuff. So this is not very different for Ed Gein. His parents weren't in a very happy marriage. They were fighting all the time. This was mainly due to his father being an alcoholic. And his mother was like super religious. She was Lutheran, which you don't really think is like a super like strict religion, but she was really religious. And she really wanted to isolate her kids from the outside world. And she did this by having her whole family, husband, kids, they moved onto a farm. And then on this farm, obviously the kids worked, and this was the only time that they left the farm was to go to school. And this kind of helped her, the mother, to isolate the kids and keep them like in check and protect them from the outside world, as she would say. We're just gonna pretend like my nose isn't super red. It's giving Rudolph, but so at school, I don't know if I want to call him Ed or Gein. I'm gonna call him Ed because that just like, he was kind of a social outcast. Again, sticking with the theme of serial killers. This is mainly because his mother would punish him if he were to make friends with anyone. I'm struggling. Where's my nose? He would get punished by his mom if he was making any friends or anything. Like I said, she was super strict on her religion and really just did not want her kids to be affected by the outside world whatsoever. So a couple years after moving to this farm, their father died. So this just left Henry and Ed with their mother. So this is when they began like leaving the farm more often and not being as like obsessed with staying at the farm like their mother wanted. They would do kind of like odd jobs around town, just anything that they could really find to do. Then Henry would start to kind of like badmouth his mother. This is like when he like got engaged and like he was engaged to like a single mother, so like she had kids, and he kind of started to see, what this was all doing to him in his childhood and his brother's childhood. So he would start to badmouth their mom to Ed, and Ed did not like that. This is where you start to see Ed kind of has like an alarming relationship with their mother. And Henry was a little bit put off by this. Like he was like, why does my brother have such a attachment to our mother? So on one of their jobs, Henry and Ed went out and they were kind of burning through like a marsh area, getting rid of all like the plants and stuff. And as they went on, a bit of a mishap happened and they lost control of the fire. And then while this happened, they were running and Ed lost track of Henry and eventually reported him missing. So they went and searched and they found his body. He had no burns, like no like fire related injuries, even though it was in a fire that he went missing. So they had just decided that it was heart disease or heart failure that had killed him. So when they found the body, they found bruises on his head, and this kind of led them to kind of go down a rabbit hole of thinking this was foul play, and they found that his real cause of death was asphyxiation. But there was no true autopsy done at this point to, you know, change the cause of death. His cause of death was still listed as heart failure. And although people did believe, even back then, that Henry was killed by Ed, there was no, like, true trial, investigation, anything like that. I just realized that every time I move out of the way, you can see all my, like, anime posters and anime figures. That's cool. So after Henry was dead, it was just left as Ed and his mother, which, again, probably is exactly what this dude wanted. So it kind of just became Ed taking care of his mother. They lived on the farm. He was taking care of her. She had a stroke and was left, like, I don't know if she was paralyzed, but she was in a wheelchair. And then after her second stroke, she, like, just deteriorated from there, and then she died in December of 1945. So then it was just Ed, and, you know, that was his mother, and like I said, even, like, his brother had kind of, like, an iffy feeling about how, like, he was around his mom, like, how he felt about his mom. Some people say, like, that his mother was his, like, one true love, which, gross, but, you know, he's a messed up guy. So here's where we get into the fun stuff. On November 16th, 1957, Bernice Worden was reported missing. She was the owner of a hardware store in town, and her car had been seen leaving from behind the building at around like 9:30 that morning. So through the day, there wasn't that many people that kind of went in and out of the hardware store, but that was believed because it was deer hunting season. So that evening around 5 o'clock, her son, he was the deputy sheriff, his name was Frank. He went to investigate, and he went in and he found that the cash drawer of the register was open, and there were blood stains throughout the building on the floor. Say floor like that. So this is when the son, Frank, realized that the night prior to his mother going missing, Ed Gein was in the hardware store. He went in, and he was set to return that morning that she went missing to buy a gallon of antifreeze. The last receipt written by Bernice Worden was for that antifreeze that morning. So, like, he was supposed to be there. Not blending, so don't, like, yell at me for this. But this is when Ed was arrested. He was arrested at the West Plainfield grocery store. And this is also when authorities went and they began searching the family farm. He still lived there. This is when they went to go search that place. And they found all of everything. How people do this. I don't know how Bailey does this, like, at least, like, once a week. It's not easy to talk while doing your makeup. I had to pause to do my crease. Not a chance I'll be doing my eyeliner on camera. So when they get to the farm, that's when they find the body of Bernice Worden. They found her in a shed. Love that. She was hung upside down, like, by her legs, like her ankles tied up, her wrists were tied up, and to not be as detailed as I possibly could be, she was found similar to a deer that had been hunted. Really gross. So it was found that she had been shot to death, and then, oh, she was decapitated. Forgot that. Yeah, she was decapitated, but that wasn't her cause of death. Her cause of death was the gun. And afterwards is when everything had been done to her by Gein. So the decapitation, all that. So obviously, dead lady in his house. So they go into, well, his shed. They go into his actual house, and then they find everything else. So scattered throughout his house were a whole bunch of like bones, bone fragments, skulls. There was like skulls on his like bedposts, just hanging out there. Then they found that a lot of the furniture in his house was made from skin. Great. So there was a cover on some of the chairs that was made out of human skin. There was a like trash bin, like a waste bin made out of skin. There were bowls made out of bones, like I think skulls. Skulls were just everywhere. I don't know what this guy liked about skulls. We'll get to the skin part. There were masks made out of like the skin of like females. These were all females, by the way. Every dead thing in the house was from a female. There was just like scattered everything all around the house, just pieces of females. And some of them were like little girls. Some of them were like, it was like pieces of like little girls. Some of them were like 15 and younger. Gross. Thank you. So this is when they start to question him, just to like, you know, figure out what is going on and why there's a bunch of little dead things everywhere. So Ed claimed that every time he was doing this, like going into a grave or a graveyard and then digging up graves and stealing things from sometimes little girls, emphasizing that, he was in a daze, like a nocturnal state, but like he wasn't sleepwalking, he was awake, he was just kind of like really out of it. And he claimed that there were some times when he would kind of like snap out of it. He'd like be like, oh my god, I'm here, I'm doing this. This is when he would, apparently, he would clean everything up, put the dead girl back in her grave. He wouldn't take anything with him, and he would just go. Also found in his house was like the head of Bernice Worden. They found her head in like a burlap sack because, you know, she was decapitated. And they also found the body parts of Mary Hogan, who had been missing since 1954, I believe. So they found her bits and pieces along with everything else. So he admitted to shooting her, but when we get there, she wasn't technically part of the trial, but he did say that he killed her. So he was real messed up after his mother died. You know, he had this weird attachment to her, he was like obsessed with her, whatever. So the women, girls that he was going in and taking pieces from, he thought in his mind that they looked like his mother enough for him to take bits and pieces from. And he had the goal, warning, this is a little bit gross, he wanted to create like a skin suit of her, of his mother, and crawl inside of it. It's gross. I said this was gonna be gross. So yeah, crazy. He had just like a really weird attachment to his mom. I guess some kind of mommy issue type deal, to put it in like modern terms, I guess. Trial time. So he went through 2 trials, kind of, and he was on like his initial trial for a week. He pled not guilty by reason of insanity. Obviously. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia like right before the trial actually started, and after his like second trial, he was ruled not guilty by reason of insanity. So as a result of this ruling, he was committed to Central State Hospital for the criminally insane. Criminally, nice. And that's where he died. He died of, I think, heart failure. He spent the rest of his life in this. Alright, we're gonna pretend like I didn't mess up my blush and my lipstick. I don't look crazy, what are you talking about? So that's it. He died in the mental institution. And now, like, in the media a lot, you see people who are kind of, like, not people who were inspired by him, but, like, directors, actors who were inspired by him. One of, like, the biggest ones is Leatherface, from the movies. But if you've seen American Horror Story Season 2 Asylum, I actually noticed this while I was watching it. Dr. Thredson, Bloodyface, he's got a weird attachment to his mother, which you see when he's with Lana, and you see him turn on the light and the lampshade is skin, like Ed Gein. So he had a lot of weirdness inspired by him, so it's like a common media thing to see. There's other serial killers that have inspired like horror movie characters, horror show characters, but yeah, those are some of the most prominent ones, I think, and that's it. Hope I don't look crazy.